Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silverback Runner podcast. So, today's podcast is going to be about something I did, coming up for 9 years ago now. In 2012, I did the Brathay 10 in 10, which is 10 marathons in 10 days over what is considered the second most arduous road marathon course in the UK. It's got massive amounts of elevation, and when they say elevation, they mean hills. And after a certain amount of time, it's not just coming up those hills, but it's coming down those hills. So I thought I'd share the story there for all of you out there. Some of you are never going to want to do anything as stupid as this, but the principles are the same. The lessons I learned can be condensed into any endurance running event, marathon, half marathon, because what I love about running, and I don't think everybody understands, is everyone's challenge is their challenge. If you've never run 5k in your life, then that's your 10 in 10. If you're going to run your first marathon, that's your 10 in 10. And the principles that I'm going to share and the experiences I've shared can be condensed into other events. And I still use things I've learned from the 10 in 10 in not just my training but also in my day-to-day life. It's without any exaggeration to say it had a profound impact on my life since then, in the way I conduct my life, the way I run my business. To have 10 marathons, to have time to think, to ponder, and to be, without too much drama, stripped bare, really. You can't talk your way out of it. You can't think your way out of it. You've got to do it. So what were the lessons I learned? Before I get into that, just the training was immense for this event. I started, I think it would have been in the July of 2011, and the event was in May 2012. So it was a good period of intense training. And just want to share for you runners out there that might be aware of things like the math method and running slow to get faster. I mentioned on the first episode of the podcast that I didn't really have anybody training me. I didn't follow any particular training plan. I just decided that the best thing to do logically was not to exert myself beyond my capacity. I didn't have a heart rate monitor. I just thought, well, logically, I've got to go out and run steady. So when I started doing my training, I got the mileage up quite quickly. But what I did was I ran well within myself. So these days I would be talking about easy runs, about keeping my heart rate within a certain zone. I was doing none of that then. I was just, for the most part, taking my runs as easy as I could. I suppose what you'd be talking about today is being able to converse, talk, whilst you run, that sort of level of exertion. And I remember the thing I did do is I did do too many miles. I remember 6 months prior to the March, just before the event, the 6 months before that, I did, I think, just around about 1,000 miles running. One of those runs I can remember being, I think it was 33 miles. Just went out one morning on what I would call a Forrest Gump run. I literally just left the house one morning really early. It was a Saturday. I had a Saturday off from my hairdressing salon, and I just went out and I ran. And I didn't know how far I was going to run. And I ran out, and I remember getting to about 17 miles and literally doing the Forrest Gump thing, thinking, I've got to turn around now, and just coming back. And my family don't get too worried about me running or disappearing for many hours. But when I came back from that run, I literally stopped outside my door, and my wife flung open the door and like, where have you been? And even your daughter was worried about you, because my daughter Ellie's not one to worry about me too much about where I am and what I'm doing. But I'd been gone so long that they were worried. I wouldn't recommend that as a training plan, but my point being is that it really built up such a solid aerobic base. And I'm not going to go into the story deeply because I did share it on episode 1, is that one of my training runs, my races, was the Brighton Marathon in 2012, and I fully planned to do that at an easy pace, and I ended up actually doing a PB of 3:24, and I'd done no speed training. So it just shows you how doing steady runs and building up that aerobic base. And not only that, the next day I actually did another training run, an unofficial marathon of about 4 hours. So that was just based off getting an absolute solid base